What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. And I told y'all, I done been telling y'all that we are about to have some of the absolute best guests coming on the channel this year. It is the one and only Adam Mares. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today. How you doing?
I'm good, Swipa, man. Good to be on here. Been enjoying the show.
Yeah. Look, I'm telling you. So you've been, ever since I started the channel in December of 2020, everybody's been saying, man, you need to get Adam on. You need to get Adam on. And so they're getting their wish granted today. So really just appreciate it. Obviously, everybody's a fan of DNVR, fan of you, obviously Brendan, Harrison, Dev, D-Line. And so, I mean, you all are kind of laying the groundwork for even the stuff that I'm doing, but the stuff that we're all doing. So we definitely appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate that, man. Really appreciate it. It's fun. It's fun seeing so many new people come into the creating new types of content, new avenues of covering the team, new communities and all this stuff. It's been cool. And what's really cool about it is I feel like it's all risen with this team. You know what I mean? Like it's like the team is growing and we're growing alongside it, all these different parts of it. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah. And, I think it's funny that, because obviously we both been watching the Nuggets for a long time, but I mean, back when they sucked, you not ESPN, you couldn't get it on channel 7, 5, nothing. You know, so to be in the Jokic era and for DNVR to exist, Denver Stiffs, and obviously Ryan Blackburn and Matt Moore and all these other great people, and honestly even Zach Lowe and all these people that are ESPN that are huge.
Zach Lowe loves the Nugs, man. You could just tell every time he talks about them, it's like he lights up.
Yeah. So look, I already know what everybody want to talk about. We just got done watching the freaking Magnificent 7 game all over again with the Nuggets versus the Pacers. No Yoke, no MPJ, no Jamal Murray. And they went out there with 101-98 victory. And I guess for you, Adam, like, what stands out to you most about what happened last night in the game?
Well, I first of all, I love that you referenced this year's big the 7, right? Because that was such an icon. There's always these games that kind of rally and get everybody feeling good about it, and that's what this game was. I wish we had a better name for it. I haven't heard a good one yet, because the 7, like, that's perfect. Now there's something with this one where you're missing all your big 3 and you still pull it off. What stands out to me, the team still believed. I mean, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about the Kings last night losing. They didn't have Halliburton, and then they get blown out. And it's like, well, Halliburton's a big piece they're missing. And I'm thinking, yeah, but guess what? The Kings culture can't handle that. You lose one piece and everything falls apart. The Nuggets culture, they lose 3 pieces and they come out with belief that they can actually pull it off. And a bunch of guys just step up in big moments, most notably Will Barton.
Look, it's funny. Maybe the Kings missing pieces been Michael Malone all this time because they haven't got right since. But that's a whole nother story, man. But look, I got to tell you, Adam, I feel like I have been defending Will Barton for a number of years now, but especially since the channel started, since the opening session, especially. And again, I think maybe the international audience in particular, because Will Barton doesn't necessarily fit yoke ball, like by a natural standpoint, or Argentinians. And
first of all, that part's crazy. I think the part about not fitting yoke ball is crazy. But we'll get into it.
Yeah. And so, but I think there's just this idea that Will Barton is a selfish player, but I have never heard a player, a coach, or anybody ever criticize him as being a selfish player or a me first person. If anything, he sacrificed his body more than anyone else to answer the call year in and year out, and to the point where he hasn't been available in the playoff, but not because he chose not to be there, but because he gave so much during the regular season. Because when Jamal Murray was out, Will Barton was there. MPJ wasn't there, Will Barton was there. And it was always Will Barton and Yoke. And now he literally, and I've been saying this, I think right now he's probably one of the 20 best guards to start the season in the NBA, which again, that's maybe fringe all-star territory right now, but where we are, but he's been excellent.
Yeah. I don't know, like the ranking thing, I just never really get into. Like, I don't think he's an all-star. I'll just nip that one in the bud. Like, that ain't going to happen, but it doesn't matter because he's been fantastic. And here's the thing about Will Barton. Every player other than the superstars have flaws. They got something about them that they just don't do well. And there's certain flaws that drive people a little bit more crazy, even though they're not worse than other things. They drive people a little bit more crazy. If you don't rebound well, people don't really care. That's not like rebounding the back, man, I wish he rebounded better, but he's so good at everything else. If you're a bad screener or this or that, whatever. Will Barton takes shots he shouldn't once or twice a game. He just presses a little bit. That's just part of a game. And Will Barton, even by his own admission, says, Michael Malone understands you live with the bad with me because the good outweighs it by so much. And Will Barton's flaw wasn't taking 1 or 2 shots every now and then that you're like, hey, okay, he called his own number, whatever. If it wasn't that, people would love him. But for some reason, people think that little flaw in him is way bigger than it actually is. And what they miss is he's the heartbeat of the team. He's the soul of the team. I shouldn't be a surprise that they won missing all those guys. Because guess what? Will Barton came out in that game and hit 2 threes to start the game to tell his teammates, we got this. Believe, I believe, everybody believe with me. He brings these things that people should actually really hyper appreciate. But because he's got that one flaw that people especially hate, it like blinds them to all the other stuff.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is you look at the package he has. He's shooting 43% from the 3-point line, 49% from the field, 4.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, 17 points per game, has a very good true shooting percentage right now. He's a playmaker. He's playing great defense on the perimeter, and he's literally been the second most consistent player on the team. You couldn't ask more from someone making $15 to $16 million a year, who initially came here to be a bench role player, who has evolved his game to becoming one of the preeminent 2 guards in the NBA. Again, we're not saying all-star, but for what you're paying him, I don't think that you can ask for anything better. Because I'm honestly thinking that if Will Barton was given this run for the whole season, if he stays healthy for the whole season, if it's just him and Jokic, they're probably going to still be where they are long-term because that's how well he's playing. It just so happens that when Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. is on, Aaron Gordon's there, and Jokic is there, he's the 4th or 5th best player. But if he's your 4th or 5th best player, you got the best starting 5 in the league probably.
I think he's probably the best at whatever he is, 4th or 5th best player, 3rd or 4th option on offense. He's probably the best in the league at that. And that is how you have to evaluate him. So you said he's a top 20 guard. The reason I don't like that stuff can get too murky. It's too hard. But if you said, let's compare guys getting paid like him, how they're performing, it's like, no, man, he gives you so much. He gives you defense. He gives you versatility. He gives you toughness. And I put this on Twitter last night. He's dynamic. And what I mean by that is a lot of guys that make that range of money are really good at one thing and they're okay at this or that. Will Barton's like pretty balanced. He's a good pick and roll player. He's a good ISO player. He's a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Like he's good. He's above average at a lot of different things. So you can't, we just got to take away one thing. Got to force him to his left because he can't go left. That's the range of player you get in that price range, but he just doesn't have it. So that's one thing I will say. If you rank the Nuggets players by best, whatever he finishes 4th or 5th, he's the best of that ilk.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is Will Barton has been right on the Nuggets players, especially Jokic, before even we were.
Yes, I love this take.
He's the one that called out and said, Jokic is that kind of dude. Y'all might not see it yet. Jokic don't even see it yet, but there's something about Jokic in 2015.
He was the first one of the players. Yep.
Yeah. And then even just MPJ, when MPJ was coming in and he was having those struggles his rookie year and trying to figure out how to play basketball, he said, but MPJ is going to be that dude. It's just going to take time. And I love what even y'all brought up yesterday about what makes him successful. Will Barton is, I just got to be me. I just got to do me. Now that might sound simple, but that's hard. MPJ still doesn't know how to just be him, but Will Barton is helping him come along. And especially, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Look, man, I don't know if you could have had a better person in the NBA to help Bones Highland come along with his rookie year than Will Barton.
I think there's something to that for sure. I mean, Baltimore, Delaware, like very similar, obviously close proximity, but also very similar. They had a relationship prior to this. I think they're similar personalities in just so many different ways. They're different in ways too, but they're similar in enough ways that, there's no question. I think that really helps Bones having him there. And also, Cam, you've been watching this. I know you've been watching the league for a long time and now covering it. Confidence is the most underrated aspect of sports. And despite what people say, athletes go through confidence breaks too. Like they go up and down with their confidence. And rookies, I think in particular, like you might say this, Cam, you're starting to get famous enough in this space that you've got haters. Like you get them. And when you get a hater that hops in the mentions and is talking this or that, like as confident as you might be or this or that, it still like gets under your skin and you're just like, man, this dude or whatever, like this guy's bugging me. Think about what players go through where no matter what, like Will Barton last night, we had people in the chat saying, yeah, but he did this. Yeah, he did this. So Will Barton, and Bones Highland, they're going through that stuff too, where they have a bad night and all of a sudden everybody's talking about him. But having Barton, who's like, I've been through it. I've been through the highs. I've been through the
Wow.
lows. Here's what it is. Keep your confidence. This stuff. That to me is the part that goes so underrated, is somebody that can really connect with him on the confidence level.
But you know what? I want to touch on that a little bit, Adam, because there's something I've noticed about 4 of the players right now off the top of my head I can think about. Will Barton, then you got Jamal Murray, Bones, and then you got Nikola. All of them come from a background that they've had to really learn how to endure at a certain level. Obviously, Jamal Murray with his story with his dad and growing up in Kitchener, Canada, and having to go through what he went through. And then even just Bones, obviously, we know his story, Wilmington, Delaware, the fire, all that other stuff. And then you got Jokic from Sombor, Serbia, and all the things he went through, and Yugoslavia and all that. Man, there's something to that. The Nuggets have assembled a collection of talent that – what happened yesterday and not having your 3 highest paid players, what happened in being down 3-1 twice, what happened in having only 7 players available against the Utah Jazz. That is not the hardest thing they've ever gone through in their life. So when they get an opportunity to say, look, we need to rally, this is something they've done since they were children. And I honestly think that I don't know if that's intentional by Tim Connelly or not, but it seems to be a message.
Well, I think what Tim Connelly is, he's from Baltimore too. Like, people don't know this. Tim Connelly kind of looks like, he has like almost a goofiness to him or this or that, just like everyday thing. But look, man, that dude is, I would say, very street smart. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't come up through the white collar. He came through the blue collar route, and he's like very, I think, savvy when it comes to like, hey man, I know what it takes in this world to survive and to thrive. And it takes a layer of toughness. And the other thing about confidence that you mentioned with, I will say 3 of those guys, because I still don't know about Bones. Like, we're still learning. So I don't want to know, but Jamal, Nikola, and Thrill, all of those guys' confidence, in my opinion, in my perspective, comes from a very real place. Barton had to go through so much adversity. I highlighted this on a documentary podcast I did years ago about sort of his route to becoming the person he is today. And you go through that and you're like, yeah, man, he was tested. He was tested so many. So when he's confident, that confidence isn't hollow. That confidence is like, I've overcome, I've been down, I've lost, I've failed, but I'm here today because I rose above all of that. Jamal Murray, you mentioned the dad. I think Jamal Murray, a very similar story in that was raised from a very early age to embrace challenge. And his confidence comes from not just this irrational confidence that he's going to be better, but just this confidence in his own ability to figure it out. And Nikola, I mean, much publicized about his route and being the second round pick and everything. That dude's tough as nails. That confidence comes from an unshakable place. With Bones, I'm curious, TBD. We're going to find out. Like, I know it's a part of his story and he's overcome a lot as well. But as a basketball player, one of the things I think Michael Malone knows is players' confidence. There's a foundational confidence that you build right now through making them earn everything. Once they earned it, that they have that understanding of, hey, I'm here for a reason, not because it was handed to me. And, contrast that even with Michael Porter, who's going through some ups and downs right now. And I wonder with him, again, I'm not calling him out. I'm not saying this or that. I just don't know. I don't know, where does his confidence come from? And is it something that can be taken away from him if there's not a solid foundation?
And that's why I brought it up, Adam, because his route to get where he is, the most adversity he's gone through from a basketball standpoint is injuries, right? It's been with his back. And
he deserves credit for how he's handled that. He deserves a lot of credit for how he's handled it.
Absolutely. And, from him only playing 3 games in Missouri but I think with Porter, again, this was the Gatorade player of the year. He was in the Kobe Bryant, like LeBron, Carmelo category coming out of high school. So for him to come to this place, he's just always been the singular most talented player on every court he's been on. So I think what the adjustment has been with Michael Malone, who's done a phenomenal job getting him to this point, it's been hard for him to have to recalibrate as much as he's had, I think, because he's literally spent 18, 19 years of his life not doing that in that manner. And so now being 3 years in, people are like, well, like, man, it still seems like it's taking a little bit of time. But again, growing up, maturing, becoming an adult, that's a process. And I think a part of this is he figures it out in waves. Like last year when Murray went down, it was exceptional. We was like, dude, that's a 24.5 points per game score, all-star caliber player. And then he comes into this year, he's shooting 21% from 3 and can't seem to get out of his own head. Well, look, I think this is just ebbs and flows through maturity. And I think sometimes people are just so impatient when it comes to that. But it's like, look, like he's 23. He hasn't given us any reason to think he won't figure it out up to this point based on what he's already done.
All good, all really good points. I love the point about it coming in waves with MPJ, because that's the thing, is it's not with him more so than these other players. It's not very linear. Jamal Murray had a bit of this. Like Jamal Murray had some games where you're like, oh, here it is. He's making the leap. And then he'd go through a month where you're like, man, he's back. He's back to the. And so like, it would be like this. It's not linear with Michael Porter, but I do feel like there are moments where he gets it, and all of a sudden he goes on 6-week stretch where you're just like, there it is. It fits. And this right now we are in, before the injury, we were in a moment where it really looked down again. And you're kind of like, man, what's going on? I thought we were over this step, but you're right that by no means should people be impatient or feel like the story or the book is written on him. Yeah. But I will say Bol, Michael Porter Jr., those guys were both YouTube mixtape superstars in 8th grade. Yeah. In 8th grade. And that's so different from Will Barton, who wasn't recruited very heavily, even there. Nikola Jokic, who was, nobody even knew who he was until he was a superstar in the NBA. Jamal Murray, even, I know he went to Kentucky, but his route, same thing. He kind of had a late rise. Bones Highland, same thing. So like, that's just what I'm talking about. Where does your confidence come from? And look, again, I don't know these guys well enough to be able to say that they do or don't have the things that I'm saying, but my perspective from the outside watching them, this is a thing that I think Michael Porter is in the process of, is building a confidence that doesn't get shaken when you have 3 or 4 bad shooting nights.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm actually really excited to kind of dive into that a little bit more, even just figure out like what that process is. And I said this to people sometimes to give them perspective, and you tell me if you agree. Remember two years ago, going into, it was the 1920 season, Yoke comes off and first team All NBA year, the playoffs, he's 25, 13-8. And we're like, oh my gosh, like we've been vindicated. We're arrived. First month, 16, 10, and 5. And we're like, yo, he's 285 pounds. What happened? But I think, again, it took Yoke until his 4th year where it had to click for him. And then it's clicked ever since. So I think, honestly, I think Porter's probably going to follow that similar route.
It could be. I mean, everybody has their own timing, but I do love the point about Yoke, because it kind of reminds me of Jamal Murray too, where he had a great playoffs and then he came back and you're like, oh, we're over this. And then it's like, no, we're not. Slow start again. So sometimes guys have to just go through that. I'll say this with Jokic, I don't think he was born this way. And I don't think that he came into the league this way, but he has evolved over the years to where he now takes seriously the gifts he's been given, in my opinion. Yeah. And you mentioned that season where he came in overweight. I do feel like that was a look in the mirror situation where he was like, what am I doing? I have a chance here to be something real special. And I think as the years have gone on, and then he won the MVP, I honestly think, Jokic would never admit this, but I honestly think Jokic looks around and says, nobody in the world is better than me. And I have a chance to be better. And I'm not just going to skate by on, I'm pretty good and I can do this. Like, no, something has clicked where he wants to prove to everyone that they're not on his level. And that's an important, I compared him to Larry Bird years ago, and people would clap back and say, yeah, but Larry was the kind of guy that wanted to steal your soul, this or that. And it was true. Yoke sometimes had that, sometimes didn't. It was inconsistent. I think now Jokic is there. I think he's there where he just wants you to know. He wants everybody to know that you're not on his level.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in the next segment, because I think that's going to be so much fun. Can you give me your thoughts real quick? Again, last night, final recap, Bones Zeke Naji. Yo, that I was pleasantly surprised with how well Zeke Naji played, to the point when he got taken out with 5 minutes left in the 4th quarter. I was like, but Jeff Green obviously did well, but I really wanted Zeke to finish that game. What did you see from him yesterday?
He was great. Again, confidence is everything. And he went on a downward spiral. His confidence was great last year. He shot 40%, over 40% from 3. He looked really good in the regular season last year, and he was playing with confidence. There was a highly publicized conversation. Tim Conley takes him around town. You think, okay, he's on the up and up. You go into summer league, first game's bad. All right, got in late, the COVID stuff, whatever. All right, second game's bad. You're like, oh man, a little rusty. Third game, even worse. Just kept getting worse and worse. And I think his confidence just disintegrated over the course of 2 or 3 summer league games, and then it extended into. Confidence is so big, especially for young players. And the one thing I'll say is, by all accounts, Zeke Naji is an incredibly hard worker. You look at his body this year, that guy's body fat is like 0%. He has really, really made his body perfect. And last night was important for him, in my opinion, because he did play very well with real minutes against real competition, knocked the shots down, rolled well, did all of the things that we knew he did well. he just did him in a game, and I think his confidence is back. So that was a big game for Zeke Naji. I don't know if he's in the rotation now. I've seen some people saying this or that. I don't know. But you know what? He's way closer than he was 24 hours ago.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's make a transition now. So all the hoopla that has happened over the last 3 days about the MVP and what happened with Markieff Morris, we have talked about it. You've talked about it. You know, there's the people that are analysts and cover the Miami Heat felt some type of way. Then you had seemingly the entire echo chamber of the NBA was like, no, Jokic was in the right. Why do you think, and do you feel that he has been appropriated more street cred for what happened 2 days ago than winning the MVP? It feels like.
Man, I'm telling you, he's a tough player to sell to the mass audience. Like, we watch him, you have to remember, Swipa, we watch him every single night, and we have for years. So like, you see it. If you just watch one game and you see the stats and you think like, I don't know he did this, or I don't know if he's tough because he got pushed and he flailed and he kind of flopped or embellished, like you think this or that, but we watched him long enough that and it doesn't take that long, especially nowadays. Like now it might take 1 or 2 games, but you know, a lot of guys will just see highlights. There's no dunks. There's, he shot this awkward one leg or whatever. But I think people seeing the package in that game about not only did he dismantle the number 3 defense in the NBA personally, complete Bam Adebayo, top 3 defensive center in the NBA, wasn't even there. Didn't even see him. You might as well had any scrubs backup center guarding him that night, because that's how he made him look. So I think it was that, but then also this factor of this dude really is about. There was no hesitation in him, and we talk about Jokic doesn't know his own strength. The hit he put on Markieff, part of why I think so many people were impressed by Jokic. He's sticking up for himself. He wasn't scared, this or that, but also because he put about 80% into that shove. Exactly. And he almost broke him in half. Like you just saw the raw power and the craziness. And then when everybody kind of stormed him, you know, we've seen guys, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. You're going to know who I'm talking about. We've seen guys throw a punch and backpedal 15 steps and like run this or that, or do this or that. Jokic laid him out. Everybody comes and circles him, and he just stands there like, what, guys? Like, what? Yeah. How many of you want in on this? Like, what, 5, 6, 7? How many of you guys want in on this? And the guys that came and rushed him knew it. Like, they saw the look on him of like, it's funny. There was a difference between what he did and then when Tyler Hero watched it happen live, took 2 steps, and then he just said, I don't want nothing to do with it. But people don't understand this about him. He is the nicest person on the court. Ayton obviously loves him. Bam has a good relationship with him. You saw what Udonis Haslem had to say about him. Yeah. He just said, I love this dude.
Like all these people. But remember, Jay Crowder, 3 seasons ago, when he gave Jokic that push in the back, last year in the playoffs, when that whole incident with the Phoenix Suns and he stood down Devin Booker.
Yeah.
He's just not one of those people that is intimidating. He said it. That quote's been dragging around on social media. He said it in 2017. We're playing basketball. What do I have to be afraid of? Like, have you seen my brother? Right. He walks around with his air about him. I don't need to flex on you. But if you cross that line, especially habitually cross that line, and I feel like I have to defend myself, then there is a 7-foot Serbian man who is, again, been through it, who has full confidence in his abilities. And I think that was what's on display. I think when Stephen A. Smith, when Skip Bayless, when Shannon Sharp, when Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal especially, when they saw that, he's one of us, because that's exactly what I would have done had I been in that situation.
Not to mention the leagues out in the Balkans, like the crowds you see in the U.S. where people are screaming and doing this and there's security everywhere. Like that's a cakewalk compared to some of the games when you look over there, and as it's been described to me, there's actual maybe criminal activity that sort of underlies some of the team ownership and this or that. And like it's one of those ones where if you get in a fight with a fan in the stands, it actually might turn violent and deadly, not just like a whatever. So he's been in situations and played and grew up in that and was groomed in those types of things in a way that it's like, I'm just not intimidated by the charade that is NBA beef. Like NBA beef is a charade. Every now and then there's a cheap shot and he elevates it. But let's be honest, that confrontation, which again resulted in a 1-game suspension, that confrontation, probably the biggest one the NBA's seen in years.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think the only two things that come to mind is Patrick Beverly pushing Chris Paul in the back in the playoffs. But and this is the thing, I know we don't talk about him a lot, but I just wanted to bring this up for the sake of relevance because Nick Wright had to say that when's the last time we've seen an MVP behave that way, like blah blah blah.
Oh, I didn't see this. Was Nick Wright was he on the wrong side of the story?
He basically came out and said because he genuinely doesn't like he just didn't like him for whatever reason, right?
Right.
And what he had to say was, he said, when have you seen an MVP cross the line like that? And I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. 2 years ago in the bubble, Giannis Antetokounmpo headbutted a man after winning MVP, headbutted someone. And he walked across the court to meet Mo Wagner and to headbutt him, and he got a 1-game suspension.
Right.
So again, it's not that like Jokic is just some abnormality. It's just that no one's ever seen him go this far because no one has pushed him this far. But I think, again, when you do stuff like that, I'm not talking about headbutting people, but when you have, especially a Morris brother who has a reputation for being a tough guy.
Toughest guy. Don't mess with him, man. Don't mess with that guy.
Exactly. And so you have a Morris brother who shoves you, who, throws his body into you, and then he laid him out. It looked like, again, had an old football expression that you ran through somebody like they're cardboard, like cardboard paper. Like, it was just for him to manhandle him like that. And I think to defend himself, I think it just took him up to a different place in the NBA ranks.
There's no question about it, man. There's really no question about it. He's a tough dude. And then the other thing about it is, Jokic does have a temper. Like, let's not kid ourselves. And it still flares up from time to time. But the thing is he's not. I don't think anybody thinks he's dirty. And that's what Udonis Haslem said. He gave that stamp of like, I don't think he's a dirty player. He was retaliating. UD didn't say this because he has to protect his guy. But I think everybody just kind of knows it. It's not, there's a difference between guys that are starting fights and guys that are finishing fights. And I think everybody looks at Jokic as a guy that finishes it. Like, he's not starting anything. He just finishes it. Yeah.
So for you, with how Jokic started this season, 25, a ridiculous 13 rebounds a game, only 5 assists a game, but that's because the rest of the team is shooting 29% from 3. He's become, do you feel like his rise as a defensive anchor is something that is legitimate? And also, do you feel like that's here to stay for the rest of the year?
The last part of that is the most interesting part, because I've always said, and this, I know you've said it too, his defense is underrated. He's been good at all aspects of defense, -1, guarding guards in open space, which, by the way, no bigs are good at. Anthony Davis is good at it. Bam Adebayo is good at it. That's the list. There's really nobody else. But so he's bad at that. These new rule changes, I think, have diminished how impactful and how frequently teams can get downhill attacking bigs. I really do. I really believe that. And I think that's part of it. The last part, is it sustainable all year? The only thing about that I'm not certain of. I think it is at their best. Like, if you told me every team's best shot, where's Denver defensively? I'll say definitely top 10, maybe top 5. Yeah. Everybody's best shot. But can you do it for 82 games when you're also the best offensive player? Do you have to do this? I don't know. We're 10 games in. I do worry about Jokic burning out. If you look at the last couple seasons for the Nuggets, they've actually been good defensively through about 10 games. Then they've gone about 60 games where they weren't. Then they finished the season. The last 10 games, they're good again. I hope it doesn't follow that, but I understand if it does follow that path, I understand why, because it's really hard to play this level of intensity for 82 games. And to be honest, if you are required to be this good on offense, I'm not sure you should press that hard for 82 games.
Well, and so do you feel like this, because, and again, people often had this misconception. In 2018-19 season, they were a top 10 defense. And then last year, they were number 12 overall, which, again, take people by surprise. So they've never really been terrible on defense. It's just when the playoffs, they were spacing Damian Lillard or Chris Paul with Facundo Campazzo and Austin Rivers. Just, they were just ripping them apart in a pick and roll. But what seems to be the change, though, is Michael Porter Jr. has taken what it looks like a leap, which we'll talk about him a little later, defensively, from knowing where he needs to be more frequently. But Aaron Gordon seemed to have taken this team to another level defensively. Do you feel like Aaron Gordon is maybe the biggest catalyst in even this league? It seems like this is the best we've ever seen them be defensively with this unit.
The biggest catalyst is tough because I really don't know you just yet. What I will say is that if you were grading Aaron Gordon, for his approach this season and how he's joined the team, he would score a 100 out of 100. And it's the story that is you and I are starting to really push now, and other Denver media are starting to push, but I hope it catches on, that Aaron Gordon came to this team and you thought he's talented enough to be a bunch of different things, but what he has chosen to be is the thing that they most need, that is probably most difficult, but is also the most underappreciated, because you look at the stat sheet and you go, he's averaging 9 points a game. Like, what is this guy getting 20 million? No, he came in here and said, I don't care about 9 points. I don't care about, he has a game with 4 shots, 5 shots this year, never complains, looks happy as a clam, because he goes out there and knows, I'm going to be the best defender on the court tonight. I'm going to be a multi-tool, and I'm not going to ask for the ball. Like, I'm going to cut hard. And if the ball finds me, I'm great. But the fact that he's bought into doing that, I'm just so impressed. And the record reflects that. The record reflects a player in Aaron Gordon who's cool with being unheralded as long as it is making the right impact on the team.
And you also said something else, that as good as a fit as Jeremy Grant was, Jeremy Grant seems to be what a low-end, high-volume star would be, whereas Aaron Gordon is the pinnacle of what you would want from a role player who is, again, all NBA defense caliber, who is selfish as can be. And this is the thing I love about what happened. And this all ties to Jokic. But yesterday in that game, when he won that tip-off, that is a part of why you sign him to the contract that he signed to. Because people don't often look at basketball players as being overtly intelligent, but Aaron Gordon shows in a level of intelligence every game by knowing situational awareness, knowing how to position his body. That screen that he set with Will Barton to get to the basket yesterday, I'm just telling you, man, like,
that's
everything that we ever would have wanted from this team, it seems to be there. The only thing missing is Jamal Murray and MPJ with his full confidence back. But anyway,
but I want to go back to what you just said about Jeremy Grant here, because again, I'm not trying to bash the guy or whatever, because he's doing a lot of really cool stuff and he is a really good player. When he left, one person I really respect explained it to me like this: he wants to see how good he can be, and I respect it. Like, he wants to stretch his wings and really see, and I respect it. And if I chew on that, it's kind of interesting for me to think about, because why is it considered being better when you're taking more shots as opposed to being better when you're doing, like, I think Aaron Gordon is spreading his wings. He's just spreading them in a different direction. So it's one area where I push back on this idea of, like, he wanted to see how good he could be as the lead guy. All right, but that's not more honorable or less honorable than what Aaron Gordon is doing, which is I'm gonna be the best piece on this team, which is, by the way, a really difficult piece. Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, these guys get all the risk. Once you win a title, all of a sudden everyone's like, hey, that's the best X factor in the league. Aaron Gordon, if the Nuggets win a title, people are going to talk about Aaron Gordon as the best X factor in the league.
So for you and everything you're seeing from Nikola right now, with how his season has started, do you feel like we are watching him take another leap in just ascending as an overall player, as a leader? Like, what have you seen that's different from him in the way he's dominating now as opposed to what we've seen even last year during MVP year?
It's like last year he was the challenger going for the title fight in terms of, like, I want to prove that I belong in, the greatest of right now. And he won. It was like he was the underdog that stole the belt, right? And became the MVP. This year he has the belt and he has the swagger, and he walks into every room as if, like, I'm the best player, prove me wrong. Whereas last year he's like, you think you're the best player, I'm going to prove you wrong. Now I'm the best player, you prove me wrong. His confidence, his strength. I mean, I think his strength is underrated. He's been strong for a while, but now you're just looking at him every year he adds, he doesn't get more ripped. But did you see the other day when he had Steven Adams and he gave a take foul and he just picked Steven Adams up, a giant man, just like almost with one hand, and just kind of threw him like that. And you go, like, how strong is this dude? He just deadlifted 280 pounds.
Exactly.
I think his strength is underrated. His confidence is on a whole other level. And the most important thing, when you get to this level, it becomes mental, it becomes existential. As we mentioned earlier, I think Jokic right now understands the gift he's been given and the responsibility that comes with that gift. And he's just on that Kobe thing where he's like, I've been given this, I'm going to get the most out of it. What does 100% of me look like? And he's trying to find that out.
Again, you tell me, I feel like every year we cross this threshold, right? Like in the 2015, 16, Kristaps Porzingis, all right, Jokic and Kristaps were fighting. And then it moved up to, all right, then we got to move into that Karl Anthony Towns status, right? And then it moved into the Joel Embiid category. And then, all right, Jokic first team All NBA, we keep ascending. Then even, I would say, last year, but even into this year, there's that Anthony Davis threshold. It's like, well, if Anthony Davis was healthy, then, he would be the best big in the league, this and that. I think we are seeing that. I think there's been more widespread acceptance of the reality that we are watching what Anthony Davis is doing in LA, and it's not enough because LeBron is not available. And it's not just national pundits, it's LA media are seeing that Anthony Davis is severely limited in terms of what you want from a franchise carrier. Whereas Jokic has never played with another all-star in his life. Murray is out, MPJ is struggling. They're the 4th seed still in the Western Conference, and he's playing at a level that he's never played at. And it looks easier to him and than it's ever looked. And on top of that, he's become a very, very good defender. Right. I think that Jokic has stepped into another category where now there's even more plus to Morris attention. I think there's even more acceptance of him as that tier 1 kind of a player than there even was after the MVP.
I think the MVP brought a lot of people on and even the play, honestly, not just the MVP, but then going into Portland and dominating that series. I know Portland was a flawed team, but look, Denver was extremely flawed team and it didn't matter. And even some of the games, if you go back and they kind of blend together at times, but the way Jokic closed out that series in game 6 with that 4th quarter, that was just like, this is over. This is absolutely over. I just think you combine that, the series prior, the Utah game 7, you go to the triple double in game 7 against the Clippers. Like, I just think it's all added up to where people are like, yeah, this dude is good enough to beat even your favorite player, like on his best nights. So I think it's kind of been getting to this point. The Anthony Davis one, I can't speak out of 2 sides of my mouth here. So I just said Aaron Gordon might not be a number 1 guy, but he's willing to be the number 4 guy, but the best at it. I think Anthony Davis is the best number 2 guy. And that's not a knock. That's not a knock on him. Like, you're right. He can't carry a bad team. He's proven that already, but I don't think that's necessarily how basketball works. That means he's not just as great as a player that's a number 1. That being said, Anthony Davis has been the counterpunch to Jokic. He's been the one guy that kind of just Jokic doesn't match up great with, but I'm so curious to see if that's still true. We haven't seen it for a bit. We haven't seen that matchup for a while. And I'm curious to see this year if those two go, Anthony Davis will bring his A game for that one. He wants to prove a point. I'm curious if Jokic has figured something out against him that maybe now you look at it and go, there's nobody in the league that guards him.
Yeah. I'm curious because I feel like, so even, and I know you hate this ranking stuff, so I'm not trying to bring up the rankings to validate them.
I'll just tell you, it's fine.
But it was before the season, ESPN put out the ranking. They had Luka Doncic ranked ahead of Jokic, right? And so this is after he won the MVP, all this other stuff. But again, I think even as we're watching what's happening throughout the NBA, again, it feels at least like the conversation around him is just slowly but surely changing because we're seeing what these other stars with flawed teams, what they still seem to have these massive limitations on what they need. Like, oh, you need to get him another star. You need to do this. But again, it doesn't matter because if you put Jeff Green and JaMychal Green around Jokic, he's still going to keep climbing. So again, I just feel like there's something that we're seeing different about him that we only really ever see maybe once every few years. And I've said this before, that I think that Jokic is of the same ilk as somebody like LeBron James that just controls every single possession. And you have to deal with him on both sides of the ball. And he's going to dictate everything you do the entire night. And I think there's only a couple players like that. So I'm super excited to see what he does throughout the rest of the year. He's only 26 years old, and he looks as if he has just made a decision to go out and dominate every person every single night, whichever way he chooses.
Well, Cam, nobody dials this up like I do with Jokic because I really believe it. Yeah. And I've muted it a little bit because I've just learned that like saying this stuff, the only people that like it are the people that already agreed with that to begin with. So like, I don't do too much back and forth or whatever, but here's what I'll say. I've said for a long time, I look at great players like Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Kevin Garnett, even, and I look at them and I say, what do they do better than Jokic? Like, what is it that Jokic why is it that we just have in our mind the ceiling on what Jokic is going to finish when you talk about the greatest of all time, these type of players? Mm-hmm. Are we sure that Pau Gasol, Dirk Nowitzki, as great as those guys were, champions, as great as they were they doing what Jokic's doing? He's scoring at the same rate as prime Dirk, scoring better than prime Gasol, rebounding better than both of them, passing. I mean, come on, don't even get me started. Impact, there's the control of the game, the toughness, all of this stuff. I'm like, he's just a better player than those guys. And you have to prove it. Dirk had one of the best playoff runs I've ever seen. So like, you get credit for being his best. I don't know what it was. 8-9 games came at the conference finals and finals. And that counts for me for something. Yoke's got to do that still. But I look at it from a talent standpoint, and I've said this for a lot of time. The 75 just came out. He didn't make it. I listened to a lot of podcasts that said he'll be on. It just was too early. So that's why we didn't. So I don't take offense to it. But I look at that list and I go, 75. 75. He's going to be in the top 25. Like, we're talking about a guy that's top 25 right now is like where I would put par, but I would be taking the over. He's going to be, I think he's going to be a top 20 player by the time we get done with it. Yeah. That's how good he is. He's just got to win now. He's just got to win to make it undeniable. Yeah.
So making that transition, we talked about Michael Porter Jr. a little bit. What do you think is the next maybe piece for him? Because it seems, again, he's struggling with his confidence. Obviously we're, based on some of the things that have come out, we're looking at anywhere from a week to a month, whatever else it is, just for him to heal up. Yep. What do you feel like needs to happen for him to maybe regain that confidence, but also continue to take that ascension that he seemed to be on going into the season?
He's got this is tough, because when I talk about Michael Porter, I dip into my least favorite thing to dip into, which is a little bit of like, I think to solve this puzzle, it's less about what talent he has and skill he has, even though those are there. And it's more about approach. And the truth is, we just don't know this. Like, I'm taking a guess based on the available evidence and things that you see or hear. And my thing with Michael Porter, I honestly believe this. To me, I think he has to open his mind to the thing that's missing, because he has the talent to fit into this Nuggets system so perfectly if he wants it. I think he sees it being different. Like, in his mind, what does it look like for me to average 23, 24 a game? And it looks one way, but it's not that way. It's actually another way. Same output, same result, 24, 25 points per game, great efficiency, but it's going to become off of him learning the game, learning some of these cuts. Where are the cutting angles? He's not a great screener. He needs to understand why being a great screener actually opens up shots for you. Jamal Murray's the best shot screener on the team. Yeah. Guess what? He gets wide open nonstop because of it. Yeah. Michael Porter, I think, has to be more open than it appears, or just maybe he is open to it. He's just not seeing it. It needs to click for him about, hey, where do my shots come within the flow of the offense? And how do I get better at reading these like the game of basketball when you're playing with Yoke? It's all about making 3 or 4 quick decisions in one possession. In 20 seconds, you have to read 3 or 4 things on the fly perfectly so that you get open in the window that Yoke can hit you. And he doesn't do that very well, or he isn't trying to do that very well. But so for me, that's what it is he has to realize that the path to get what he wants, the points, the shots, all of that, is actually a different path than what he thinks the path is. That's my perspective on it.
I think, you've been way closer to it than I have, but it feels like MPJ is trying, because I honestly, everybody's always talking about this year, his shooting is bad, he's not scoring, but defensively, he's been pretty good more consistently than he had been previously. His rebounding rate is basically on par with what has been at the highest level it was last year. And he's been passing the ball this year way better. His
passing's been good.
Way better than he ever has. That first game against Phoenix, he had 5 assists, coming out the gate. And so he's made some really good passes, getting the ball at the high key and giving it down low. So it seems like he's actively trying to do some of that stuff, but he's lost so much of his edge because he doesn't seem to be as confident in his overall game because he's not scoring. And it seems like because he's done that so well for so long, he's almost lost himself a little bit on the court, as if even if these other things are going better, the thing that what I'm most known for is not functioning at the level that it usually is. And so he's taking himself out of some of even the handoffs, cutting to the basket, standing in the corner, all that other stuff. And again, to your point, I think he's the next part maybe is that screen game. Cause I got to tell you, sometimes when I watch him go set a screen, he only slips. Like
Yep.
it's never a hard sit there and let me do it. Maybe it's the back. I don't know, but he only slips. So it's just little stuff like that he continues to pick up on. I'm not really too concerned. I think he's actively made strides to be better every
Yeah.
single month, every single year, but it's just
He,
going to take
he
some
wants it.
time.
There's no questioning
Yeah.
his want. I really believe that. Like, he really wants this. And I think I tend to believe guys that want it that bad will find a
Yeah.
way. The last thing I'll say on this, we just mentioned Barton and Murray, and all, these guys are tough as nails, and that toughness serves them. And I think Michael Porter can probably use a little bit of a jolt in that department. I mean, we saw this last game, and maybe he's been hurt. Like, we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Maybe this injury wasn't just a one game thing where it happened in that game, but maybe it actually happened and it's been a thing he's dealing with. I don't know. But we saw that last game right before he got hurt, Jokic looking at him like, why didn't you go for that loose ball? Like, even if you didn't get it, just try and doing this. And I think that's one thing that he's not a guy that is always giving maximum effort on the ugly stuff. And I think that's just one area where I think it's like, you kind of have to do that as part of your process of learning all the other things. And for whatever reason, he's a little bit behind on that. But again, I think he wants it bad enough. And if the team has his back through this down part the right way, and if he is open to, hey, maybe this path I'm trying to walk down isn't the right one, and there's another way to get there that's this other way. If he's just open to that and figures it out, all that talent can be unlocked. That talent's locked up right now in a safe.
Yeah.
Once you find the key and unlock it, all that other stuff comes pouring out, and all of a sudden 50-point games, games like where he's 7 of 10 from 3. And those games are going to come back and to go to a whole other level.
Yeah. And I think to even touch on your last point you made about some of the grittiness, there are times when he looks very physical. I'm even thinking about the dunk that he had against the Clippers in the playoffs, and he'll get to the basket. He drove against Mikal Bridges last year. He even drove it. He has some moments where he would get it in the lane and being physical. But to your point, he's not an ugly player. He's never been an ugly player. Like, he doesn't dive for basketballs. Like, he's not jumping into a crowd to save the ball. Like, that's just never been his DNA. So sometimes I feel like, because I know Murray does it, I know Will does it, I know Jokic will do it, I know Aaron Gordon will do it.
Right.
So sometimes it feels like he's on the outside of that a little bit, but I don't know if that's because, again, maybe it is. I messed my back up before, dude. Like,
right. It might be.
I'm not going to do that,
Who's the best player you talk? Because I think Michael Porter, he said it. He wants to be an all-time great. He doesn't want to just be good. He wants to be an all-time great. Like, he wants to be the best version of himself he can be. What's the best player that wasn't tough as nails?
That was not tough like that?
That was not tough as that. Wasn't above a borderline threshold of toughness in terms of just like, he's going to hit you in the mouth. It's tough.
That's hard, because I feel like that's intrinsic to, and I could, my mind goes back to like the 2000s and back. So, I don't know who would have survived in that era. I have to think, like, Kevin Durant, it's not that he is not, his physical is not like batter you physical, but his physical is, I'm going to do this. And this is what I would love. Like, you don't understand.
He has some nasty to him, though. KD has some nasty to him.
He does, but like, I have dreams, Adam, like at night where I think about Michael Porter Jr. doing a heady crossover to the basket banger, like the Kevin Durant. So like, I'm trying to figure out, like,
funny though? I don't have those dreams. I really don't. I don't have those dreams about him doing that. Cause again, that's a path. That's like a different path. You know what I mean? Like, he already has, in my opinion, good enough one-on-one moves that they could be sprinkled in. They're not his game. I don't think he's a one-on-one player. I think he's much more of a wide receiver than a running back, meaning you give the running back the ball and they do something with it. Receivers run routes and you hit them with it. And then maybe they have a little shake at the end of that, to break free. But to me, he's a wide receiver. Jokic is the best quarterback we've ever seen. Work that. You can score all these. Klay Thompson has 60-point game with 12 dribbles. You can score a lot of points in this league without having to like do those moves you're talking about. He's got enough that once or twice a game you get that, but focus more on the routes. Where do you read these cuts? How do you come off? What's your footwork when you catch the ball in a dribble handoff that allows you to get to the foul line and elevate because nobody can block it? He shouldn't be locked up on handoffs the way that he is. He's 6'11". He jumps 40 inches on his jumper and it's perfect. That he should have the footwork on those are undeniable. and they're not. That's what I dream about. That he had 7 DHOs for 7 3-pointers, and he got 21 points in one quarter off of all handoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, your question is interesting because and again, I'm even thinking about this. I'm looking at Scotty Barnes in Toronto, like when he's coming into the league. He's physical. He plays very physical. So
he's big. He's a thick dude.
Yeah, he's 6'9", you know what I mean? And so I don't know what player that, and again, maybe that's also a part of the issue. Like I can't really remember a time where I've seen Michael Porter Jr. just look physically dominant on the court. Right. But maybe that's the next step in this game.
I think there's something to it, man. But you know what? Like I said, I'm negative. I'm too negative on Michael Porter right now in my analysis. And like, it is not because it's because I'm reacting to things that are happening, and the things that are happening are negative. But I'm not negative in terms of one of the beauties of following this. This is my 8th year. One of the beauties of this is you just see guys, the ups and downs are just so beautiful. This is what makes sports so interesting is everybody gets hit in the mouth. Some people get back up. Everybody gets hit again. Some of those guys get back up. And like at the end of the day, 90% of guys don't overcome it, but it's so cool when the ones do. And right now he's being hit for like the 3rd straight year in a row. He's being hit in the mouth again. And it's like, does he keep getting back up? Because one of these days you break through and you're the last dude standing. Yeah.
So last question. The Nuggets are 7-4. They have 4 more games to their home stretch. 3 more games to their home stretch.
3 a quick trip to Dallas, and then 2 more home games. Yep.
Yep. So are you confident and are you satisfied where the team is right now from a win-loss standpoint? And do you see them over the next, through those first 20 games, do you feel like they're well positioned to be around the 4-3 seed and to kind of be a catalyst for the rest of the year?
The way I look at it more is, can you build some equity right now? Because you're right, 7-4 with 3 more home games. If you get to 10-4, you know how much pressure is off your shoulders? And this includes Michael Porter, by the way. If you can get to 10-4, Bones Highland. I've said this so many times on my show, but when the Nuggets, I think Isaiah Hartenstein's a good player.
Which show?
One of my shows, maybe all of my shows. I think Isaiah Hartenstein was a good enough player to get a better chance than he got. But the Nuggets started 1-4, and Michael Malone's like, nope, we're not experimenting this year. We're not experimenting. I think if you get to 10-4, you get to experiment. You get to say, Bones, we're starting you tonight because we're giving Monte the night off, and I just want to see what you look like in a starting lineup. And Zeke, we're going to play you 30 minutes tonight, and you get those luxuries. And Michael Porter, don't worry about making shots, man. We're good. And all of a sudden, he's making shots because he's not worried about them. So Denver has 3 games coming up. I suspect, I don't know what Michael Porter's status will be. As you mentioned, Michael Malone kind of let it slip. He's questionable, and then he was out. So he might be closer than we realized to coming back. But I wouldn't mind if Denver played 1 or 2 more games without him to get to fully cement the rhythm that they've developed. And that way, when Porter comes back, it's more clear fitting into this rhythm than establishing a new one. And I think that's the best thing for him. So you asked me if I'm happy, if I'm content. I'm very close. I'm 1 or 2 games away from being like, there it is. They got it.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is a lot of people were saying that, well, hey, it looks the offense looks a lot better without Porter in it. That must be indicative of the fact that Porter doesn't fit. I'm like, no, it's just everybody knows what their role is because they're all role players. Every single one of them. There's one star and there's everyone else. And so when your offense is built that way, then everybody already knows, okay, I'm getting to the basket. I'm standing here. I'm doing this. It's a pick and roll, dribble handoff. We're moving. Porter is a star quality player. And he's trying to figure out how to be in this the system that is all about how to fit within that and use my skill set and make it work. And it looks murky sometimes. So again, I think sometimes people just maybe rush to judgment, but again, maybe that's just the way fandom works. You know better than me.
There's a kernel of truth to it, and that's what makes it a thing, right? It's not, it gets blown up out of proportion, but there's enough truth in it that it's like, hey, there's something to that. Maybe it's not what you're saying, but there's something to it. Here's the last thing I'll say on the matter, and I think it's the perfect example. There are 2 teams. If you cut out the KD Warriors, because that team was just silly, if you cut them out, over the last 20 years, there have been 2 teams that have had 3 superstars that made it work, in my opinion. The Golden State Warriors before KD, who had Draymond, Clay, and Curry. And then, in my opinion, and it was a little weird because they weren't superstars at this part, the 2014 Spurs to me were a perfect team where all the pieces just fit. But when you look at the Miami Heat, when you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, there was always a guy that had to take a major step back, like Bosh, Kevin Love, that were like better than what they gave, but they had to take a step back. I don't know if Michael Porter fits onto this team if he has to take a step back the way Kevin Love did and Chris Bosh. I think, but Jokic, like Tim Duncan, like Draymond Green, they can be fulcrums of an offense in a way that everybody can feast if you get there. So to me, the ceiling for Michael Porter fitting on this team is really, really high, but there are more examples of a third wheel being less than what they're supposed to be and maybe unhappy than there are examples of it working out. So it's a real challenge with a huge, huge, huge upside. And that's part of what's so interesting about this.
Yeah. Well, look, Adam, this has been spectacular. I know that everybody's going to love this. And can you, again, everybody already knows, but can you plug everything you're doing? That way people can subscribe to it, listen to it, everything else?
Man, DNVR, I mean, you know it. It's one thing I puff my chest out about this, Cam. We have a staff of 26 people, full-time employees, the medical benefits and life insurance and dental benefits and this or that. We got the bar. We got all this different things going on. That's unheard of right now. You see how many different media companies come and go and even big ones come and go and they try to make it work and they're not making it. We are making something new and special work right now, and we're hoping to grow and expand it. So if you like the stuff that you see, and this goes the same for Swipa, this goes for any of your favorite content creators, that stuff exists because you guys like it and want it to exist. So check out DNVR, consider becoming a member so you can see my film study breakdowns, and, you know, just support good content because it's a lot more fun going through this rise with the Nuggets with all of us and all this content that's coming out and all of us, but it doesn't exist just because it exists because people support it. So support your favorite content creators.
Absolutely. And y'all, just again, personal favorite of mine, the episode that Adam did with Zach Lowe came out a few months ago. If you haven't had a chance to go listen to it, go listen to it. I mean, obviously, Adam, you also host another podcast with LockedOn Nuggets and all that stuff as well. So go listen to that. So again, I deeply appreciate you even doing this, obviously. And I know our audience is going to enjoy this as well. So thank you for being here. And y'all, look, lock in for the next episode. We out.